I was getting recruited very heavily in basketball. A lot of Division I offers. I mean, I was Notre Dame, USC, Tennessee, all kinds of places. So if you've ever seen that play, you can see me as soon as I catch it, I kind of look back and the guy got around the left tackle. So I just rolled out and just basically running for my life. And all I could do was hang it as high as I could to give them time to run under it. Man, I couldn't have been any happier to be in Cleveland. I was just thrilled to have an opportunity to be here.
Hello again and welcome to the latest installment of Club 46, driven by Bridgestone. I'm Jay Crawford, thrilled to be joined this week by my broadcast partner and former #1 overall draft pick of the Cleveland Browns in the 1999 draft, Tim Couch. Tim, great to see you again.
Great to be with you, Jay.
I say 1999 and I immediately do the math and say, wow, 20 years ago, you were starting this incredible pro football journey. Yeah. If you would, take us back to that moment in time, really 20 years ago right now as the preseason's winding down and you're getting ready for your first show.
Well, the biggest thing I remember is just being so young. And, you know, I left college a year early after my junior season. And I was coming to the Browns franchise, who had been out of the NFL for whatever it was, 3 or 4 years, and they were getting their team back. So not only was there so much excitement about me coming in as, you know, the #1 overall draft pick, and but, you know, just getting their franchise back. So there was just so much excitement in this city. And, you know, you could feel it as a player. And, you know, growing up in Kentucky, you know, close to Ohio, I knew about the Cleveland Browns history and how great of a franchise this was. But getting here, you know, as a rookie and getting to Cleveland and getting a chance to experience what these Browns fans were like in person was just, man, I couldn't have been any happier to be in Cleveland. I was just thrilled to have an opportunity to be here.
How can that be 20 years ago?
I know. It does.
It seems impossible.
It doesn't. No, it doesn't seem possible at all. You know, I look back at it and it just seems like a few years ago that I retired, and it's like, no, I've got a 14-year-old son now. You know, so it's crazy how fast time flies.
Let's go back to the early days. Tim Couch, growing up in small town Eastern Kentucky. Take us back to that time in your life. What was it like?
You know, it was a different time. You know, I grew up in a town of 350 people with, you know, not many people make it out of there, to be honest with you. You know, it's a coal mining town, and that's what most people end up doing after high school, is going to work in coal mines and doing those kind of things, or you become a teacher. There's just not a lot of opportunities. But, you know, there's certainly not #1 NFL draft picks coming from that area, you know.
Right.
But, you know, as a kid, I was always, I just had this unbelievably unbreakable confidence and belief in me. And
where did that come from?
You know, I don't know. I
Did
honestly,
your parents have something to do with that?
No, I mean, not really. I really don't even come from an athletic family other than my brother. My brother was a college quarterback as well, and, you know, all-state player in high school. But other than us, it just, I don't know where it came from, but I always just felt like I was going to make it. And looking back at it now, it was probably my way of, like, I got to do this to get out, because I'm not working in a coal mine. Like, I'm not doing that. Like, I want something bigger for myself. And not that there's anything wrong with that. Both my grandparents worked in coal mines, a lot of my friends. Me personally, I just wanted something more for myself, and sports was my kind of way of making it.
A lot of boys have those dreams.
Right.
For most, they never come true. At what point in your childhood did you really realistically think this could happen?
You know, it started probably pretty early when I was about an 8th grader or a freshman, and it really started in basketball, to be honest with you. And I knew I was a pretty good player. I was on the varsity basketball and football team in 7th grade, and I was the 6th man in basketball in 7th grade. I was a starting quarterback on the junior varsity team in 7th grade. Well, the parents, honestly, they wouldn't let me play against their kids because I was already 6'3", and the other kids in 8th grade were, you know, I was pretty much a grown man. But, you know, honestly, at that time, I just kind of figured I was probably, you know, pretty good for that area, you know. And then I started going to camps, went to blue chip basketball camps, and I won MVP of the entire camp. And, you know, I'd go to Tennessee football camp or Auburn football camp and all these camps, and I would always win MVP awards of every camp I would go to. So I was competing with kids nationally. And at that point is when it really started kicking in for me, like, I can do this, like, I can compete. I've seen myself against kids from other states, all over the country, and I stack up, you know, size-wise, athletic-wise, And once I was coming into high school my freshman year, I felt pretty good that I was at least going to be able to make it and play in college somewhere.
Most young boys growing up in Kentucky have basketball dreams,
Yeah.
hoop dreams. That's the state's lifeline.
Yeah.
You could have really taken your choice. Your junior year, you led the state in scoring, and this is a state with deep talent. You averaged 37 points a game. What point in your life did you say, no, it's going to be football, not basketball?
Honestly, not until I got to college, because I was getting recruited very heavily in basketball. A lot of Division I offers. I mean, I was Notre Dame, USC, Tennessee, all kinds of places for basketball. But for me, my senior year of football is when I kind of started a little bit leaning towards football. But it's still at that point, even I considered myself a basketball player
Really?
who played football, and I just I happened to just be breaking all these national records in football and those kind of things. But I was also leading the state in scoring in basketball, and I wanted to play both sports. I really did when I went in college, and a lot of schools were absolutely no. You're going to be the quarterback. You're not going over there to play basketball. You're not doing this. So Kentucky kind of convinced me that they would let me do both, and so that's why I ended up really going to Kentucky, is because I wanted to play both sports. And I wanted to be, like you said, as a kid growing up in Kentucky, I wanted to be the next Rex Chapman. Rex Chapman was at Kentucky when I was a kid growing up, so I was really looked up to Rex, and we're good friends now. So he was kind of that person who was like, oh, he's a kid from the state of Kentucky. He's my height. He made it at Kentucky, and he kind of gave me a lot of inspiration that I could go do the same thing.
You were being humble when you said I was breaking some of these records, but when you left Leslie County High School, the national passing record book had your name in it all over it. You had virtually every record. I think you completed your senior year 75% of your passes.
I think that may still be the record.
It is still the record. I looked.
Yeah, and I actually have the NCAA record for completion percentage in a season as well.
You also have the Browns
and the Browns,
season,
yeah,
or the career completion.
Yeah, I think career. But looking back in my high school career, when I graduated, I'd thrown for more yards, more touchdowns, completed a higher percentage than any quarterback that ever played high school football ever.
Wow.
And at the time, being an 18-year-old kid, that didn't really hit me. I just thought I just want to go win the daggone game. And that's all I was really thinking about. But now that I'm older and I get a chance to look back at that, that's pretty special. To be able to say, a lot of people played high school football. And to say that I'd thrown for more yards and touchdowns and completed a higher percentage than anyone, that had come before me, is a pretty cool thing to look back at.
I think what's really cool too is it's not just the football records. You were also the state's leading scorer as a junior, I mentioned, in basketball. And ESPN, in their not so distant time ago, did a countdown of the greatest high school athletes ever. And there you are at number 6, ahead of guys like LeBron James, Tiger Woods, some pretty heady names. What do you think when you look at that now?
Just, it's just shocking. I show that kind of stuff to my kids now, and they're just like, really? Because they see all these other names on there. But yeah, it was just, it was a surreal time. I mean, it really was, just being a, small town kid and having so much media attention and hype. I mean, I can remember we would go, for us, we would go to Lexington and play a game against a Lexington school. That was a huge deal for us, coming from the mountains, going to play a team from Lexington, and there would be 20,000 people there to watch the game.
There to see you.
Yeah, I mean, they were standing like all the way around the track and everything. They couldn't even hardly see the field, like all up on the hill. So it was just like a traveling show that my senior year, because my junior year I'd had a really big year, and and everyone, so my name kind of got out there, and then my senior year is when it really took off, and there were major college coaches at every one of my games, and it was just it was an event every Friday.
I don't remember this offhand, and I should, because I was there covering you for part of your high school career. But did you have an announcement? Did you have a day when you grabbed the hat and put it on? And if so, what was that like? Yeah,
I did. It was actually right before the Kentucky-Louisville basketball game, which was a huge event, and it was at Rupp, and it was in one of the rooms downstairs there, and it was so packed in there. And I walked in, and I had to get up and give this, speech, which I was uncomfortable doing. But there were so many people there and so many cameras.
Was it out at that point that you were going to Kentucky?
No, I announced it right before the game. Right
Wow.
So then they brought me, you know how they bring you and do the Y when they spell
Sure.
Kentucky
Yeah,
and
yeah.
there's a Y?
Yeah.
So I'm a senior in high school and they bring me out. And, you know, Kentucky-Louisville basketball game is, I mean, it's hype. I mean, it is.
Statewide event.
I mean, it's a lot of energy in the arena anyway. And then I just announced that I was coming to Kentucky and, you know, I was the National Player of the Year. Kentucky football does not get the National Player of the Year. I mean, Kentucky had won one game the year I committed to them, before I got there.
Wow.
They won one game. And now they're getting the National Player of the Year. So I walk out and do the Y, and the place just goes insane. And I just remember thinking, man, this is going to be crazy. Like I knew staying in state and playing for my home state school was going to be a big deal, but that's when it kind of first hit me that, you know, this is a really big deal.
I've been there in that state for some recruitment battles of major high school stars, and I see the pressure that can be applied by the locals.
Yes, yeah.
I don't know that you would have been able to pick any place but Kentucky and still been able to come home to Kentucky and call that home.
Yeah, you're exactly right. And I did. I actually committed to Tennessee originally with Coach Fulmer and Coach Cutcliffe. Peyton was there. You know, Knoxville, the area where I grew up in Kentucky, Knoxville was just as close to where I grew up as Lexington was.
Yeah.
You know, but you know, I grew up. You know, it was weird, but I grew up a Tennessee football fan, a Kentucky basketball fan, because there was nothing to cheer for in Kentucky football back then. So I committed to Tennessee originally, and then my dad, like you said, uncommitted me to Tennessee. Yeah, that's how that worked, and it was more of a family kind of pressure thing, and not only family, but almost, you know, just the fans. Community, like I was almost felt like I was letting everyone down. So I told my dad, like, I'll go to Kentucky for 1 year. We'll see how it goes, and if I don't like it, I'm going to transfer back to Tennessee. And it was the worst year I've ever experienced in sports. Bill Curry was the coach. I wasn't even playing. I was running the option.
Yeah.
And I was, you know, the all-time leader in passing in history of high school football, and he has me running the option, which was crazy. He gets fired halfway through the year. And I'm like, hey, I'm leaving at the end of the year. I'd already called Coach Fulmer at Tennessee and had my brother call him. And I said, look, at the end of this year, I'm coming down there. Like, I'm transferring. I'll sit out a year behind Peyton, and then I'll take over. And then C.M. Newton, the athletic director at the time at Kentucky, comes to me and he says, just go through the process with us, and we're going to find someone that suits your skill set. And here comes Hal Mumme and Mike Leach, and I stayed, and the rest is history.
Yeah. Regrets? About that, about staying at Kentucky, or did you ever think about that?
Yeah, I think about it all the time. I feel like if I were able to do the things that I did at a Tennessee or a Florida or an Ohio State, which were the schools that I was considering, if I were able to put those numbers at those schools, I certainly would have won. I feel like I would have won the Heisman Trophy because, I mean, I finished, I think, third in the Heisman at Kentucky. But, you know, and I missed playing in those big games like the SEC championship game or, you know, just those big time bowl games. Those are the things the only thing I regret. But, you know, at the end of the day, I was still the number one pick no matter where that I was playing. And we really helped turn Kentucky football around. And, you know, this year they just won 10 games. But it's just been really getting better and better and better. We kind of, you know, the air raid system that we created in 1997 with Hal Mumme and Mike Leach, people still run it all over. I mean, Cliff Kingsbury just got a job in the NFL running the system, you know. So it's we started that in 1997. So I'm really proud of what I was able to accomplish at Kentucky. And, you know, other than a few little things, you know, about playing the big games and those kind of things, I don't regret anything. And it was an unbelievable experience.
You did have a lot of milestones while at Kentucky, and were there at a time when the program was completely turned around from the time you got there to the time you left. You played in some big games, but one I have to ask you about was a game against Alabama. They hadn't lost to Kentucky in 75 years.
Right.
And they had a quarterback that Browns fans might know well by the name of Freddie Kitchens.
Yep.
And you guys put on one hell of a show. Tell us about that game.
Yeah, that game was that was one of those games as a college quarterback, that's what you dream about. Like, that's what you go play college football for, to have these moments. And, you know, we're playing Alabama at home. I'm a sophomore. Freddie's a senior. And, you know, like you said, we hadn't beaten Alabama in 75 years. And they came in. We felt like we had a good chance. But the game kind of gets going. It's going back and forth. I'm throwing touchdowns. Freddie's throwing touchdowns. And we're just kind of going back and forth. And then finally, the game goes to overtime. And Freddie gets the ball first. He throws a pass over the middle. Our DB hits his receiver right as he catches it, fumble. We get the ball. So now all we have to do is score and win. And it gets to, I think it's a 3rd and 8 play. We call timeout. I go over to the sideline. Craig Yeast, who was my top receiver, and I go over to tell Coach Mummy on the sideline, hey, this is a coverage they've been playing on 3rd and long. I think we can, do a trip set and put Craig one-on-one on the backside, run an in route, and there's a hole back there. We can at least get a first down. I can throw it in there. And sure enough, they play the coverage we're thinking, and I hit Craig on this pass, and I'm just thinking first down, right? Let's get a first down. And he catches it, breaks the tackle, runs into the end zone, and before I knew what was going on, the whole stadium was on the field. I mean, they're carrying me off. They ripped down the goalposts, and it was just, like I said, it was one of those moments that you really live for as a college quarterback. To beat Alabama on a last-second touchdown pass in overtime, it's like, man, it was just like, it was an unbelievable experience.
Where does that rank in your top moments of college football for you?
It's definitely up there. Also, we were able to go on the road and beat LSU on a last-second drive, a last-second field goal as well. And, no one really goes to Death Valley and wins at night. It's a tough place to play.
Wow.
And, Kevin Falk was on that team for LSU. He's the running back. They had a good team, but we went down there and were able to march down and get a field goal as time expired and beat LSU on the road, which was a cool experience. Louisville, we played, our biggest rival. We played in the first game ever at Papa John's Stadium in '98, and I threw for 500 yards and 7 touchdowns in that game. And we put up 68 points and just hammered them. So that was one of the one of the best
new stadium.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. So just there's so many great memories of my college experience. I played with so many really good, great teammates, and obviously the coaching staff was just incredible that they brought in for my sophomore and junior year.
So you finish at Kentucky after your junior year. You declare for the draft, and there's a lot of talk about the Cleveland Browns are re-entering the NFL with an expansion franchise. What was the experience for you leading up to the draft?
It was, I felt pretty good that I was going to be a top 3 pick, just based off what I did my sophomore year, and then I came back my junior year and had even a bigger year. So I felt like I was, going to be a top 3 pick from what I was hearing back from the NFL, and just going through the experience was, it almost felt like they were just trying to break you down more than anything. They're like, okay, what's wrong with you, kind of thing.
Right.
What can we find? Why shouldn't we draft you, kind of thing. So it was a different experience than I was expecting. The combine was a weird experience where you just kind of go there and get paraded around and weighed and measured and pulled and see doctors and all this kind of stuff. But it was just overwhelming. It all happened so fast. We played Penn State my last game in college in the Outback Bowl. From the time we played them and I declared that I was going to the draft, it was just like a whirlwind of going here to train, going there to see this quarterback coach and this trainer and this and that, just preparing to do all this stuff. How to learn to get up on the chalkboard and talk to these coaches in a room, talk X's and O's, and getting your body to look right a certain way, and get a certain size with the weight staff, and then obviously just training to get your to be able to throwing the ball as well as I think I'd ever thrown it. I really started working on a lot of fundamentals and really honing in and getting working on arm strength and those kind of things, just to do whatever I could to impress the scouts.
How did you find out that you were going to be the #1 overall pick?
With the first pick in the 1999 draft, the Cleveland Browns selection is from the University of Kentucky, quarterback Tim Couch.
Well, the Browns were negotiating with Akili Smith and I, and then they wanted a contract. They didn't want a holdout situation. They wanted someone, whoever they picked, they wanted the contract done, and so I guess they decided on me. And the morning of the draft, I ended up signing the contract right before I went on stage in the men's room at Madison Square Garden.
So the men's room at Madison Square Garden always has a special place in your heart.
Yeah, so that's where I ended up signing it. And still, you're sitting back in that green room, and until you hear your name called, it's just like, you're so nervous. And I'm looking around, and there's Ricky Williams, and there's Edgerrin James, Champ Bailey, Javon Kearse, Torrey Holt, Akili Smith. It was a great draft. It was a really good draft. Donovan McNabb, a really good draft. And you're sitting there like, man, there's so many talented players in here, and they're going to choose me for the first pick. And it's just like, It's an overwhelming experience. You're there with your family, and that's one of those days that you know when it's happening that you're never going to forget.
So what was your first experience with the Browns once the contract was done? How did they welcome you into the family, and how did you feel about becoming a Cleveland Brown?
Well, the first thing they did was they put me on Mr. Lerner's jet and flew me straight to Cleveland, me and my family. And I was actually back in Berea before we made our first pick of the second round, which was Kevin Johnson. It was just, I was so excited to be here and just to, like I said earlier, just to be a part of this new Browns, coming back, to be the first player ever picked in the new franchise. It was just awesome, and I was so excited about what we could potentially become here. And I knew back when Bernie and Brian Sipe and all those great teams that they had, how this city was and how they loved this, how they loved their football team, and I couldn't wait to be a part of the team that brought it back.
So what initially was the plan for your playing time first year? What did they tell you?
Well, they told me that you're not going to play this year. This is we'll put you in here and there, in games, but they said we've got a really inexperienced football team. We've got first-time head coach in Chris Palmer, and they said we're not going to throw you to the wolves on an expansion team. And I was like, okay, that's fine. And we've got we have Ty Detmer ahead of me, who's been in the league 10 or 12 years or so, whatever it was at the time. And so Ty was going to do that. He was going to be the starter, and I was going to back up and come in here and there. And so we're playing here at home, the first game back, and we're playing the Steelers. And I think we're down about 35-0 in the game. And Coach Palmer looks at me and goes, "You're in." And I'm like, "Thanks."
So much for that plan.
Yeah. So I get in, and it's just a disaster. I throw an interception on the first pass ever. Just threw it right into double coverage. Just awful. And then I ended up starting the next week on the road against Tennessee, and I was a starter from that point on. So it lasted all of 3 quarters, the plan.
Everybody has a plan until they get hit in the mouth.
That's right, yeah.
When you look back at that time in your career, how much would have it benefited you to just be an observer for that first year?
Well, I really wish that's what would have happened. Now, when they came to me and said, "Do you feel like you're ready to play?" and those kind of course I said yes. I'm a competitor. I thought I want to be on the field. But looking back at it now, it was such a rough year mentally and physically for me because I got sacked. I think at the time that was an NFL record. I think I got sacked 56 times that season, and it was just hard. We weren't winning games, and for me personally, I just wasn't used to failure. Everything I'd done in high school, everything I'd done at Kentucky was just, I'd kind of just, that's what I was used to, going out and breaking records and winning games and, being, considered the best, if not one of the best. And that year was just like, man, I feel like, I don't know is it me or is it, what's going on? Like, we're not winning. I'm not playing well. I had games where I played well, it was up and down, but nothing was consistent. Mm-hmm. And so yeah, I lost a lot of confidence that year. Yeah. Like that it just kind of like popping the balloon. You come in with all this hope and optimism, and it's all of a sudden like you're just like, golly, what's wrong with us?
Yeah.
So it was tough from that standpoint.
It was very tough for the '99 Browns to really put together a formidable team. How much do you think that impacted your ultimate career?
A lot, I really do. It's, we had a few good players here and there. We just didn't have a good football team. My top receiver was a rookie in Kevin Johnson. I was a rookie. We had a first-time head coach. We just were really inexperienced in a lot of areas. And we didn't have a lot of depth, and we had we had a lot of injuries that year actually. And, we were playing with a lot of guys that probably shouldn't have even made the team that year on other teams. They probably wouldn't even have made a team. But it was just one of those years where it was like, man, like everything felt so difficult. Like just to complete a pass at times felt so difficult. And then there were games where it was like, okay, this is starting to click here and there. But then you'd kind of get knocked right back down to earth. And we were in a tough division, playing Pittsburgh twice a year. Baltimore was really, really good with, Ray Lewis and those guys. Cincinnati, just good defenses. And so it was a really tough year, both mentally and physically for me.
during that rough rookie season, that first win was very special. It's one I'm sure you'll never forget. Talk about how that thing went down at the end.
Yeah, that's one of those that if you're going to wait, whatever it was, 6 or 7 weeks into the season to get your first win, that's the way to kind of say, here it is, you know. So we're on the road and we're playing in New Orleans. Mike Dick is the head coach for the Saints. Ricky Williams, who was in my draft as well, is the running back, and it's a good game. You know, I think I threw 2 or 3 touchdowns in the game, and we're playing well. I'm like, okay, we're going to win this game. And sure enough, here it goes again. The Saints get the ball, they go down, kick a field goal, and they go up by a couple, 2 or 3 points, whatever it was. And there's maybe 15 seconds left, something like that, 15, 20 seconds. And we're like, all right, here we go again. We're going to lose another close game, just like we've done all season. As we get the kickoff, and I throw a deep pass to the sideline to Leslie Shepard, about a 25-yard comeback right on the sideline. He catches it, steps out. It puts us about 55 yards out or so, 60 maybe, and like 5 seconds left on the clock. So I'm like, all right, this is all we can do, just throw it up and hope. And so I catch it, and I was going to set in the pocket, and I got pressure off the left side. So if you've ever seen that play, you can see me. As soon as I catch it, I kind of look back, and the guy got around the left tackle. So I just rolled out and just basically running for my life. And luckily, he got kind of knocked off, but he had pressure on me quickly, so I had to throw the ball before my receivers were down there. And all I could do was hang it as high as I could.
To give him time to
give them time to run under it. And if you watch that play, that's probably the best throw that I've ever made in my life, as far as like the way the ball came off my hand. And I mean, that ball was launched. I mean, it was 60 yards probably in the air, but I had to throw it so high. It was the key.
To scrape the top of the dome.
It was, I mean, when it came down, it was coming down at the receivers. And that's why, you know, when the ball came, it was coming like straight down, and it got tipped up, and KJ caught it, you know, in the corner. And it was just like, I mean, you would have thought we had won the Super Bowl, you know, the way we were running out on the field, and we just couldn't believe it. Like, you know, it had been a long 6 weeks or 7 weeks, whatever it was. It felt really, really good to win a game.
3 years later, you did that again with Quincy Morgan against Jacksonville.
Yeah, and that one was special because that was the year we went to the playoffs, and we absolutely had to have that win. You know, that if we don't get that win, we're not getting in the playoffs. And it was, you know, another similar one. We were in Jacksonville, and they score late. I think it's going to be over, and we get the ball, no time on the clock. I actually got sacked the play before, and I couldn't stop the clock, and my receivers were already down the field. So everybody's got to run back. You know, hurry. I'm trying to get everybody on the line. Can't spike it. You know, all I can do is snap it and go. So the receivers run back, get snap. I think I got to snap off with like a second or 2 on the clock. So here they go running, and
after essentially just running all the way down and all the way back.
Yeah. So I don't know how we made that one happen, but I remember there was the safety. Somehow they left 1-on-1 with Quincy because I had 3 receivers here, and Quincy was over here by himself. The safety was kind of over the top, but he thought I was going to throw it to the 3 receiver side. And I just kept looking over there, kind of with my head like this, but I was looking at the safety here. And he started running towards the 3 receiver side, and I kind of gave it a little fake and got Quincy 1-on-1 and just threw it up to him. And man, he made an unbelievable catch, which if they reviewed it now,
it might not have been a catch.
It was dicey. It was a little dicey. But we'll take it, though. Yeah, and then Phil Dawson comes in, kicks the extra point, and we win the game.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A fun fact. You are still the only quarterback in the history of the NFL to have 2 50-plus yard passes to win a game with no time left on the clock. That's kind of cool.
Yeah, that's really cool. You know, that's a pretty cool stat. You know, to be able to do that and win games in that fashion is just. I mean, to throw a game-winning touchdown pass, period, is an unbelievable feeling. But to throw it from over 50 yards twice with no time on the clock is just. It's pretty cool, and you know, you never forget those for sure.
That season was magical. There was a lot of magic dust flying around that year. What was it like to be a part of that team?
Well, it was really cool. You know, just because I'd been here from day one with this team, and I'd seen the expansion team. I'd been through the bumps. I'd gotten sacked 56 times as a rookie, and I'd picked myself up, and now we're here. You know, we had a good football team. You know, we had a really good young football team, and you know, I remember Mr. Lerner passed away that year, midway through the season or so, and I remember right after he passed away, we went on the road to play the Jets in New York, and we were down by 17 at halftime, I think.
Wow.
and we come back out and win that game. I got hot in the second half, man. I was really throwing the ball well, and we came back and won that game. And there was so many games that year that came down to the last play. Another game in Baltimore on the road. We're 92 yards away, no timeouts, and I drive us down the field, throw a touchdown pass to Mark Campbell. We win that game. The Jacksonville game we talked about. That's 3. Last second drives. There. But every game that year was so close but we were just so much more competitive. That's what I remembered. Like every game felt like a big game because we were in it. Like years past, we were just kind of getting manhandled and getting blown out. But that year, I felt like we were really starting to turn the corner, and we had a good football team.
Yeah. What do you remember about that playoff game?
Well, I remember just being disappointed because I was in a cast. I broke my leg we had to beat the Falcons here at home. If we win, we're in. And I think it was in the second quarter of that game, I believe it was. Second quarter, I think, I broke my leg. And I couldn't finish the game. And Kelly Holcomb comes in, finishes the game. William Green has the big run, run, William, run, the Jim Donovan call. So we get in, and I'm, just in the locker room, and I'd been through. It was so disappointing for me. I was so happy for my teammates, but for me personally, just because what I'd been through with this franchise, and I'd literally started from day one with the expansion team, and now we're going to go to the playoffs, and I'm not going to be able to play in it. Yeah. It just felt like, it just really set me back. And we go out in the playoff game, and Kelly plays an unbelievable game. He throws for over 400 and some yards in the game, and we should have won the game. We really should have won that game, but we didn't. And I just remember being so disappointed that I wasn't on the field with my teammates because I'd been there, all season long. I'd finally, starting to live up to some of the hype. I just took my team to the playoffs in my 4th season, starting with, from expansion to 4th year in the play. I'm like, in my mind, I'm thinking, this thing's right on track.
Yeah.
It's right on track.
Yep.
And then I had that, and it set me back. And then the next year was just kind of just a mess because how well Kelly had played in the playoff game. It's kind of a back and forth the next year of who's starting this week, who's starting now. He would start a couple, I'd start a couple. And then, that was it for me here. It was the beginning and the end when I broke my leg and couldn't play in the game. And so I was only here for one more season.
Yeah. When you look back on that time, what was that playoff run like getting to that for you? And you'd mentioned that there was a time in your rookie year where you thought, were you beginning to question yourself? Yeah. And now you've kind of come full circle. How gratifying was that for you?
Unbelievably so. I just felt, like I said, I felt like I was right on track of where I needed to be. And I felt I was playing good football. I was really throwing the ball well. Bruce Arians was my offensive coordinator at the time, and we just had a really good relationship. And I felt really good in his system. And we just, he just had me believing in myself. He had been with Peyton Manning, and then he came here to coach me. And then he went with Roethlisberger and Andrew Luck and Carson Palmer. He just really knows how to relate to quarterbacks and put in a system that's friendly for the quarterback and go out and have success. But it was just that year, the playoff year. Looking back at it, certainly never thought it'd be the only playoff appearance the Browns would have in the last 20 years. I thought we would be a team that would go to the playoffs year in year out at that point.
Yeah.
So that it's special in that way that it's we're the only team to have made it to the playoffs in 20 years. So that's a cool thing to be a part of. We had just remember the teammates that we had. All the guys that I played with, and Phil Dawson and all those guys that were on that team. It was a fun year.
Your time in Cleveland, we mentioned the different draft rules that made it difficult for the Browns. Yeah. I think you were telling me a couple of weeks ago, throughout your career, you can only remember playing with 1 or 2 Pro Bowl players.
Just one. When I was in Cleveland, we had one guy made the Pro Bowl. It was Jameer Miller, the defensive linebacker. The year we went to the playoffs, he made the Pro Bowl, and that's the only Pro Bowler I ever played with in my career.
That's almost unbelievable.
Yeah. Never had a Pro Bowler on offense. Not an offensive lineman, a running back, or anything. Nothing.
So when you look out on the field today, and Baker has these Mercedes-Benz all over the place, you can't help. Human nature is, boy, I wish I could have had that.
Of course. I would be lying if I said, man, Like how fortunate. I hope he knows how fortunate he is to be here when John Dorsey just so happened to be here and to build this thing. And they've just done it the right way. John Dorsey's done it the right way with Baker. You know, he realizes that Baker's a franchise, that you're going to build this thing around him. We're putting every piece in place that we possibly can for him to have success. And it's almost, you know, and Baker's a great player. I'm not saying that at all. But he is really, really set up for success. But that's what it's all about in the NFL. You're only going to be as good as the players around you.
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter how talented you are as a quarterback. The people around you will reflect, you know, how you're going to perform.
Sure.
And that I think any quarterback that's played in the league will say the same thing. So he's very fortunate, and I just hope that he stays healthy and that they can take advantage of it.
How did your Cleveland experience end?
They came to me, Carmen Policy came to me at the end of year 5 and asked me to, you know, because my contract was starting to get, you know, pretty high up there, and asked me to take a pay cut. And I basically refused because I felt slighted by the organization at the time just because of the way they treated me after I took the team to the playoffs. And the next year I'm not even a starter on opening day because I broke my leg. You know, I just felt that I wasn't treated properly. And, you know, a lot of athletes go through that. And you know, but I just felt like from where being here from day one and going through that whole process with this organization, and then at the end, they want me to renegotiate my contract. And I'm like, no, I'm not. So they just cut me.
Yeah.
You know, they cut me, and I ended up going to signing with the Packers, and going to, you know, having a great opportunity in Green Bay, actually. And, you know, at that time, Brett was kind of doing his, I'm going to retire, I'm not going to retire,
Right.
you know, whole thing. So in my mind, I'm thinking I'll go here for a year or two, whatever it takes, learn from Brett, and be the starter for the Green Bay Packers. And I get there, and in training camp, I have my shoulder starts hurting. And Brett's kind of looking at me like, man, you know, I've seen you play in this league for 5 years, and something's not right. And you're not throwing it like I've seen you throw it. And I was like, yeah, man, my shoulder just hurts. Like, I don't know what's going on. It hurts. So finally, I go down and I see Dr. Andrews down in Birmingham, and I've got a torn rotator cuff, a torn labrum, and a torn bicep tendon. So I'm on the operating table, and they're repairing my whole shoulder. So obviously get cut and that kind of thing, and I'm out of the league. And then come back and get healthy from that surgery, and I think I rushed it. I came back a little too soon, and I was going to go to the same situation in Indianapolis and back up Peyton for a year.
Sure.
So I went down there, worked out, and workout went great. And they said, well, let's just go take a look at your shoulder and see where it is structurally after this major surgery and see what it is. They found another tear in my shoulder, so I'm on the operating table again after that. And then after the second surgery, I end up in Jacksonville for training camp. And man, I'm telling you, I felt like I was throwing left-handed or something. Like I just was, after the first surgery, I felt like I was getting close to being back. After the second one, I knew it was over. I had no chance.
You never felt
Right again, no.
How did those injuries occur? Did it happen when you were playing with the Browns, or did it happen when you were in camp with Green Bay? You never knew of an episode.
Yeah, you know, I'd battled some shoulder and elbow injuries when I was here in Cleveland, and I think it just kind of got worse over time because you know, I was one of those guys who was like I threw the ball way too much, as far as like practice. I just
and threw with velocity.
Yeah, and I threw the ball like after practice I would go home and throw. Like I was just obsessed with throwing.
Wow.
And I just did too much, I think, and it wasn't a hit that did it or anything like that. It was just, I think it was just kind of all the hits that I took and all the throws that I'd made since I was in high school and college and the NFL. It just kind of it gave way, and it just had a lot going on in there, and it was bad. Dr. Andrews got in there and he said it's really bad.
Yeah.
So, but he did a great job. He did both my surgeries, but. I just, after the second one, I just didn't feel right. I kind of lost the velocity I had on my throws.
Yeah. Well, fortunately for you, there was a lot of good things to come post-playing career, and 2 very successful acts in your post-playing career days. And I'd like to transition to those, but to do that, I want to go up to your other office, and that's the broadcast booth where you call the Cleveland Browns games now for preseason. Let's take a trip up there.
Let's do it.
The hay is in the barn for most of the starters. They will watch tonight. Hello again. So good to be with you. Jay Crawford along with my partner Tim Couch, the former #1 overall draft pick of the Browns back in 1999. All right, Tim. Now we're in your office today here at First Energy Stadium. Different look at the game from up here, obviously. How do you tap into the experience that you gained as an NFL quarterback and bring it into the broadcast booth?
You know, I think for a quarterback, it's really kind of a natural transition, to be honest, because we're always in the film room breaking down film and trying to understand not only what we do offensively, but what the defense is trying to do to us as well. So I think for a quarterback, you really do have to know both sides of the football really well. So I think it helps me, as an analyst, because I can understand, fronts and coverages and blitzes and those kind of things and see it through the quarterback's eyes and I just kind of try to relate that out on camera.
Do you enjoy doing it?
I love it. It's a lot of fun. This is the first opportunity. Last year was the first opportunity I had to do NFL games. I was doing college games before that, and really enjoyed and just love being with you guys. You and Bernie and Dustin. Our team's a lot of fun to be around, and just being back around the Browns organization is the best part for me.
Did you ever think one day that maybe after playing you would transition into TV, or did that just happen?
It just happened. I really had I had no idea I would ever get into that, and just kind of fell into it really, and just started doing some stuff with the SEC and doing a studio show in Atlanta, and then calling the SEC games on Saturday. So really just kind of fell into it, but really enjoyed it. Just kind of love how it allows me to be around the game and be around the players and coaches, and just kind of kind of gets me back into it a little bit.
Do you have a color analyst that you watched growing up, or maybe even now, someone that you pattern your style after that you think has done a great job?
I think Troy Aikman does a great job. Yeah. I really do. I like the way he calls the game. I think he keeps it pretty simple. But I think he's super knowledgeable, obviously, and I just like his style, the way. And I was a big fan of Troy when he was a player as well. So that probably is one of the reasons why I like listening to him as well. But I always catch his game when he's on Sunday.
When you look down on that field, I'm sure you're flooded with a million memories. Let's go good and bad, and we'll start with the good. What's your best memory of playing football in First Energy Stadium?
Best memory would probably be when we beat Pittsburgh here in I think in year 2, just because it also goes with my worst memory here, because my worst memory here would be the first game that we ever played in this stadium when, I wasn't starting that game, but, there was just so much hype for the Browns coming back, and I think they beat us 41-0 or something. They put me in the game. We were down by like 30, and that was my worst memory in here. But, then the next year I think we opened up with Pittsburgh, I believe, that year, and I threw for over 320 yards or so and a 3 touchdowns, and we ended up beating Pittsburgh here on this field. So it was a really cool experience.
So Pittsburgh, the best of times, the worst of times.
That's the way it goes with your rival, right?
That's exactly the way it goes. You're setting records in high school, you're setting records in college, you still have some records here for the Browns. Everything you touch turns to gold, and you retire and you say, I'm a young man, what am I going to do for the rest of my life? And you say what?
Well, I didn't know for the longest time. It took me a few years to figure that out. So I got into a few different things. Some friends and I, we started a clothing company called Fan Outfitters in Lexington and Louisville, and we had a couple stores in Oklahoma. We ended up having like 9 stores, and we sold that business to a company called Lids, a hat company called Lids, bought us out. So that we did really well with that one. And then right after that, my brother, who was in the financial business, working for a firm in Lexington, came to me and said, I think I've got a pretty good handle on this financial business. Let's start our own company. And I'm like, okay, it sounds good to me.
That couch name in Kentucky is gold.
Yeah, we had a good start. And, my brother had built up a decent book, at his firm that he was with. So we were able to bring several of those people over with us just to get us started. And then, we've really built that business over the last 8 or 9 years now. And it's a great business, man. We've got over 20 advisors under us and working for us, and we've got offices in 3 different cities, and we've got right over $1 billion under management now. So we've grown, man, and it's been really successful.
That's a long way for a young guy from Eastern Kentucky, where a good living is working in the coal mines, if you're blessed enough to do that.
Right.
Do you, when you reflect on where you're from, and you mentioned both of your grandparents were coal miners, and where you are today, what are those thoughts like for you?
I feel so fortunate. I really do. I feel fortunate that, even if something, even I had this talent that I had in athletics, what if I had gotten hurt? What if I had went to college and just totally blew it, didn't perform? What if something would have went wrong? What would I be doing now? That I think about that all the time, and just how fortunate I am that literally everything fell into place for me. In high school, I had the right coach who put in a system that allowed me to throw it. Nobody was throwing the ball like that in Eastern Kentucky. But I had a coach who played college football, and he came back and put in a spread offense for me. And then I get to college, and I have a coach like Hal Mumme and Mike Leach that come in, and just it's perfect for me. And then everything just kept falling into place for me, and I was so fortunate in so many ways to have people around me that believed in me, that saw what I could become, and they just, a lot of people did a lot of things for me. But I just feel fortunate, like we talked about earlier, there's just, NFL athletes don't come from Eastern Kentucky, and they just don't. And for me to be the one that made it and became a starting quarterback for an NFL franchise for 5 years is truly a blessing. I feel fortunate every day I wake up, like I can't believe I got to experience that and go through that life, of just being the National Player of the Year in high school, the SEC Player of the Year, first team All-American, Heisman Trophy finalist in college, the #1 pick in the NFL draft. Like, to say I did those things, looking back at it, I'm like, it sounds like a fairy tale. It doesn't even sound like I actually lived it. It seems like a whole lifetime ago. But I wish things would have went differently for me in Cleveland. Obviously, when I say differently, I mean longer.
Yeah.
I wish I could have done it for 10 years, not 5.
Sure.
Because I did love it. I loved playing for the Browns, and I'm still a huge Browns fan to this day. I just wish I could have done it over a longer period of time. But that's really the only regret I have is, once I got to the NFL, the injuries started to pile up and just couldn't stay healthy, for a long period of time. And, there were times when I was with the Browns where I was playing really well. I had some really, really good games. And I couldn't do it for a consistent period of time. And that's what it's all about as far as making it in the league. You have to do it every Sunday. And, a lot of it had to do with, me being inconsistent. A lot had to do with me being on a young, not very good football team.
Sure.
So there's a lot of things that played into that. But at the end of the day, it just wasn't consistent enough.
Tim, it's been great. And I know I speak on behalf of all Browns fans that we love having you back in the fold. And you've been a terrific addition to the preseason broadcast team. And it's nice to have you back in the Browns family. I know fans really enjoy it.
Well, I appreciate it, Jay. It's great to be back, and hopefully I can do it for years to come.
All right, very good. That's going to bring to an end another episode of Club 46, driven by Bridgestone. Thank you so much for making time for us. Be sure to check us out next week when we have another installment of Club 46. We'll sit down with another all-time great Cleveland Brown. Until then, I'm Jay Crawford. We'll see you soon.